And you're watching On Point. Today we have one On Point. Nepal faces a crisis as Prime Minister KP Oli resigns in the wake of violent protests and no leadership in sight. And now let's take a quick look at the headlines. Nepal Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli and his cabinet colleagues resign as violent protest grips the Himalayan nation. Protesters said ablaze KP Sharma Oli's private residence hours after Nepal PM resigned amid violent demonstrations against the government. Supreme Court, Parliament burning in Nepal. Protesters also torched residences, offices of political leaders. Violence on streets in Nepal. ex-PM Deba and Canal Foreign Minister Arzu Deba and Finance Minister Vishnu Paudel attacked in Kathmandu. Lamishane and Balen Shah lead race Nepal's next PM after Oli's exit. MEA issues advisory to defer travel to Nepal. Embassy in Kathmandu sets up emergency helplines. Prime Minister Modi interacts with the flood-affected people in Gurdaspur in Himachal, announces rupees 1,500 crore in aid for Himachal and rupees 1,600 crore for Punjab. Nepal's Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli has resigned after anti-corruption protests in Kathmandu turned violent for the second consecutive day. Angry mobs ransacked Prime Minister Oli's residence and set it on fire, along with attacking the homes of several other ministers. Minutes before Oli resigned from his office, protesters broke into Parliament and set fire to one of the buildings on the premises. आपको मुझे नहीं काटना चाहिए. Today, Parliament stands dissolved. Army is the only institution standing. Oli, after resignation, explained his decision to bow out. He said, "I was appointed Prime Minister of Nepal in accordance with Article 76(2) of the Constitution. However, in light of the current abnormal situation that has arisen in the country and with the intention of seeking a constitutional political outlet and advancing efforts towards resolving the crisis, I hereby tender my resignation from the post of Prime Minister with effect from today's date." Early on Tuesday, anti-government protesters set fire to the house of the Minister of IT, Prithvi Subba Gurung, pelted stones at the residence of Deputy Prime Minister Vishnu Paudel, Nepal Ras Bank Governor Biswa Paudel, and attacked the house of the former Home Minister Ramesh Lekhak. Current Finance Minister Vishnu Paudel and the former Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deba were also beaten up on the streets of Kathmandu.
जिउँदो लास भएर त्यहाँ भटभटी पोलेर बसिरहेछ।
Event mirrors Sri Lanka at 2022 and Bangladesh of 2024. In both the cases, anti-corruption protests forced Mahinda Rajapaksa and Sheikh Hasina government to fall. Now, who will emerge as the new leader of Nepal? Protesters are looking beyond traditional parties and leaders to lead the country. If they have their way, the next leader could be Kathmandu Mayor Balen Shah, and also someone who is known as Balen. The rapper turned engineer turned mayor has become one of the most popular public personalities in Nepal. In 2022, running as an independent candidate, he stunned Nepal's big parties by winning the mayorship of Kathmandu. Since then, Balen has governed in an unorthodox style. He broadcast city meetings live, took bulldozers to illegal buildings, and directly challenged municipal officials accused of neglecting their duties. Now let's have a look at the Nepal's parliamentary composition. Nepal uses a mixed electoral system to elect its House of Representatives, the country's main legislative body. A portion of the 275 members are chosen via first past the past voting. The remaining seats are filled through proportional representation, where voters choose parties rather than candidates. And this is the layout of the political parties with members in the House. And that is why it's a government of coalition. Now let us decode the impact of the regime change and the ensuing instability on India. The September 2025 Nepal protests are explicitly anti-corruption and not directed against India. That is on record. New Delhi is keeping a hawk's eye on development in Kathmandu given Oli's coziness with China and history of anti-India actions. Now let me put some spotlight on Oli. In 2016, he signed Transit and Transport Pact with China. 2017, he linked Nepal to China's Belt and Road Initiative. 2020, he drew map to include Kalapani, Lipu Lake and Limpu Darya. 2020, objected India-China trade via Lipu Lake Pass. 24, refreshed BRI MOU securing 41 million in Chinese funds. 24, alleged India encroached on Nepal's cultural history. Again, subsequently claimed Sita, Ram, Ayodhya belonged to Nepal. The government's blocking of 26 social media sites added to the frustration of Nepal's young people, but the real trigger for the street protest was unemployment, disillusionment with systematic corruption and failed leadership. On this issue, I'm joined by S.D. Muni, author and Professor Emeritus School of International Studies from JNU, Sachin Tamil Sinha, Youth Leader, Nepali Congress Party, Rita Khanal, political analyst, and C.K. Lal, columnist, the Kathmandu Post and Kantipur Daily. They all join me from Kathmandu. Thank you, all of you, for joining me. But straight away, let me go to Mr. Muni first. Mr. Muni, second day of violent protest in Kathmandu. You were there with me yesterday. Is Nepal going the Bangladesh way?
It's going ahead of Bangladesh in terms of violence and destruction. If I can compare the two, it is very unfortunate but true that the protests today are far more violent and aggressive than they were yesterday. Yesterday it was the police and the army which was having dominance over violence. Today I think the protesters are having dominance over violence. Where I am worried about is that this time, yesterday I thought, and correctly so, that the attack was on the corrupt leaders and their political parties. Today I find that the attack is on the system as a whole, burning Supreme Court, burning Parliament, burning Singh Darbar. These are not very healthy signs, burning President's official residence. This is an indication that the attack is on the system. And if the attack is on the system, we have to look for who will benefit out of the destruction of this system. I hope my assessment is incorrect, but I fear that the nature of protest today only indicate in that direction.
Okay, let me straight away go to Mr. Lal. Sir, you join me from Kathmandu. Thank you very much. Your opening comments, sir.
Yes, I can hear you.
Your opening comments, sir. How do you
is your
sum up the
question?
situation in Kathmandu, sir?
Arsonist had a field day today, and there was some method in the madness because the arsonists seemed to have a real map of the houses they were to set on fire. It's very difficult to identify particular houses of politician in this crowded city, in a compact city. But they targeted almost every institution and all individuals associated with these institutions on a higher plane. For example, the governor of the Rashtra Bank, the central bank, for example, or the finance minister, previous prime ministers. Actually, one of the a wife of a former prime minister, Jannath Khanal, succumbed to her injuries due to the fire which was set to her house. She died. So it's complete madness. Very difficult to project where it will go.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm also joined by Rita Khanal. Thank you so much, madam, for joining me. Your opening statement. How come Nepal police and army did not intervene, protect the elected representative? Why did it go out of hand, madam?
Thank you for question. Please, sir, I am very sorry. I like to speak in Hindi.
नहीं बिल्कुल आप हिंदी में बोलिए. मेरा सवाल है कि स्थिति आउट ऑफ कंट्रोल क्यों हुई?
जी अभी क्या है कि हमारे जो जेठ जे पूछता है वो लोग का जो अपना मार्ग था वो तो पूरा हो चुके हैं. वो प्राइम मिनिस्टर को रिजाइनेशन चाहते हैं और गवर्नमेंट को रिजाइनेशन चाहते हैं, वो हो चुके हैं. लेकिन अभी वो इतने गुस्सा हो के ये लोग ने एक दिन के जरिए ये सिचुएशन नहीं आए. 30 बरस से ये लोग ने जनता को इतना हिपा था, जितना को जनता को इतने नजरअंदाज किया था. एक घटने के कारण आज इतने बड़े हादसा नहीं हुआ. वो सबके अंदर इतने ज्यादा गुस्सा है. कल हमारे जो बच्चे कॉपी और पेन लेके निहत्था आंदोलन में गए थे, वो एक भद्रा आंदोलन में, लेकिन उन लोगों ने 25 आदमी को हादसा कर दिया और कईयों आदमी 500 से ज्यादा अभी भी इंजुरी है. तो अभी अपने सब आदमी को क्या लगे, वो बच्चा अपना बच्चा है. अभी सभी नेपाली वो माता पिता जो लोग हैं अपने बच्चे मर गए, तो वो लोग में इतने गुस्सा आया जो अपने साथ अपने दोस्त वो मर गया. तो अभी उनका भी गुस्सा अभी कंट्रोल नहीं. आप है ना हमारे हिंदू में है ना, जब महाकाली बहुत आक्रोशित हुई थी तब उनको किसी ने कंट्रोल नहीं किया. स्वयं भगवान शिव उनके पैर के नीचे गई, तब उसको कंट्रोल हुई थी. अभी क्या है कि इतने गुस्सा हो चुके कि उनका गुस्सा के लिमिटेशन कोई फेंक ही नहीं पा रहे हैं. तो इसी और साथ में मुझे अब क्या लग रहे हैं, अब कोई घुसपैठ भी हो रहे हैं. वो घुसपैठ रोकना है. अब हमारा जो भी सार्वजनिक हमारा सब प्रॉपर्टी है, जो हमारा संसद भवन है और प्राइम मिनिस्टर हाउस, वो तो लोग ने समाप्त कर चुके हैं. और जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट है, तो कल जो हमारा प्राइम मिनिस्टर बनेंगे, जो गवर्नमेंट चलाएंगे, उसके लिए भी चाहिए. अब वो प्रॉपर्टी बचाना पड़ेगा, लेकिन इसीलिए पुलिस भी कंट्रोल नहीं कर पा रहे हैं.
ठीक है, पुलिस भी कंट्रोल नहीं कर पा रही है. सचिन, यू आर देयर विद मी. सचिन, व्हाई डिड द प्रोटेस्ट टर्न violent this time when the prime minister and the ministers started to resign from yesterday, and what are the actual demands of the student leaders now, and how is Nepali Congress now positioned, because the older political parties are being attacked by these I may use the word mobs.
As rightly pointed by my previous speakers, this anger, this agitation was not born in a single night. It was the anger, it was agitation, it was frustration of almost 3 decades. And these leaders were given chances time and again and again and again, and that includes my own political party, the Nepali Congress Party. There was a fringe fraction of my political party who demanded change always, and we wanted to tell the leadership, this is not the 30s and 40s. I was talking in Nepali date. This is not 70s and 80s where you can actually run, you can actually push your own message and then people will believe. Today, people can zoom in the lives you live, the kind of, watches you put on, the shoes you put on. And this is a result of, a number of instances where Nepali people actually felt defeated. If I have to put you into picture, So Nepali people were watching a movie where the villain was winning consistently, right? So they saw some villains, they were winning consistently. They wanted a climax where the villain had to be defeated, and it unfolded in today's ugly manner. Now you cannot put the full blame on the Gen Z protesters as well, because yesterday the way the government handled yesterday's protest and the massacre of 19 innocent youths. It could have been done in a much better way. But turns out that the leaders that we're banking on for the last 2 or 3 decades are actually so incompetent that they cannot handle a single protest, and everything compiled today, and it went on to unfold the way it did.
Sachin, Gen Zs are to be associated with technology, gadget and a lifestyle. I think this is the first time I am in my 26 years of journalism is watching there's a Gen Z protest which is violent, supremely violent. Do you think that anti-social elements have made their way in this protest? I don't want to use the word outsiders, but there is nothing called an unorganized protest. Every protest has a momentum, every protest have rioters, and every protests have handlers which turns violent. We have seen that in Bangladesh, and we have seen a different type of protests in Sri Lanka. There were protests, but they didn't burn the presidential suite down. They restored democracy in Sri Lanka.
They did, and that's something I fear as well, because the way it's going right now, we're in a midst of a political vacuum that we've created for ourselves. But again, even if there was intervention of some unwanted fraction, unwanted forces, I think the government yesterday was to blame, because the information was there. We were constantly feeding this information, but the way they took it, the lightness of the seriousness, the unserious attitude, the political, the politics of indifference that was already established in our leaders. For instance, I'll give an example. My party president, who has now finally been forced to go out of the government, he does not use social media at all. And imagine not using social media. How can you get the proper sense of the condition when you do not use social media at all? And how can you run the biggest democratic party in the country without using social media in today's time? So even if there was infiltration of those kind of elements, I think it is completely the government who failed with all the intelligentsia, who failed with all the information given by not just people outside the party, but within the party. And this is, I think, a very, very sad day. But I think the leadership has to take the bigger chunk of blame.
Okay, Mr. Muni, what is going to be the role of the Nepalese army?
Well, as I said, that obviously there is some method in the madness, and it is surprising and painful that army has not been able to protect even president's official house, who is the commander-in-chief of the army, technically speaking. That tells me that are there lobbies within the army, or are there lobbies within the police which want to let this kind of a destruction go ahead? It's a big question. And the only forces which will be benefited out of the destruction of Republican structure. I fully agree with my young Nepalese friends that these leaders and the parties have got to go. This is not the way they can really function. Certainly the leadership, because even in Nepali Congress, there are friends, he is around. Even within Nepali Congress, there were protests against the leadership of Deuba and Arju Rana. Okay? But even Gagan Thapa stood up against them. And he said, I am with the protesters who are there. And Gagan Thapa's house was also burned down. Now, I cannot understand this. Maybe I don't have enough understanding of the situation in Nepal. But logically, I cannot understand that those who supported the protesters, those who were against the corrupt leadership, why should the institutions be? What Supreme Court, okay, you have problems with the judges. Why burn the building? If you want to remove the president, why burn the official residence of the president?
Absolutely.
His parental residence was already burnt up.
Absolutely.
So that's my problem. And I just one sentence that I fear that hope the violence part has not been taken over by the antisocial elements, or for that matter, I'm sorry to say, the royalists.
Okay. Now let me go across to Babina Mokhtar Lawati, Member Constituent Assembly and the former MP, RPP Nepal. Thank you so much for joining us. Madam, why did the situation go out of hand today? What is your assessment? Why weren't leaders, they were protected at least, taken to safety by the army and police?
This has been a very long pent-up frustration of the Nepalese people, particularly the youth, and this is not outcome of just the social media ban. It has not happened because the government has banned the social media. It has not happened in just a day or two. This is an escalation of events which has been, it has been going on for about 20 to 25 years now. The corruption is at its peak. So, all these frustrations, these pent-up anger, it's of the youth, is that was what the outcome came out to be yesterday and today.
But then the bigger question is that the army and the police also didn't do the job. I mean to say, the protest is legitimate, the anger is legitimate, but other institutions failed to control the crowd. Why did that happen? As Professor Muni also pointed out, are there factions within the ruling establishment which led to the complete breakdown of the administration?
No, I really don't think so, because yesterday what happened, the police, it was the police who killed about 19 to 20 of our children, of the Nepalese youth, of our children, including one minor who was only 14 years old. But because the crowd was so massive and so huge today, I think it's because of that they could not control. Maybe the proportion could not go too well, because the agitations and the violence and the burning was happening all over, not just Kathmandu, but all over Nepal. So maybe the government was not really prepared for this kind of outburst. That's why I think you see a little staggering on the side of the administration.
I would say that is an understatement, madam. But Mr. Lal, why was the government blindsided? There was a blindsiding which took place in Bangladesh, and a lot of critics would say that we didn't get the picture in Dhaka, right? But there was a complete blindsiding of the government in Kathmandu. Why was there so much of if there was a rage, so much of anger which was already there in the street, why wasn't that sensed by people who were ruling Nepal? Mr. Lal.
The government and the political parties thought that they would be able to tide it over. The immediate reason is pointed out to be the ban on social media, but I think government had certain information, and to kind of prevent that, they went for this social media ban. It boomeranged upon them. Government, I think, had certain information, but I agree with the previous speaker that they could not anticipate that it will be so well planned, so spread out. They thought that, like in earlier protests, people will gather in center part of the city and they'll march towards the parliament. It will be easy to stop. That was one reason. Second, I agree with Professor Muni that some provocation from police force cannot be ruled out, because they started shooting from inside the parliament building. Of course, burning down of the parliament building today showed that the protester had nefarious designs. They were not bent upon just changing the leaders, but throwing away the system itself. So when protesters are intent upon throwing away the system itself, they don't fear violence or counter violence. So I will not blame the government per se for mishandling it. It was just beyond their capacity, and they were too confident. And in addition to that, probably they did not have full support of the permanent establishment of Nepal, which had a soft corner for the protesters.
How do you define the permanent establishment of Nepal, sir? What is this permanent establishment of Nepal?
That would be all the security forces, the top bureaucracy, certain business houses, those who have held control over reins of government, not just for 25, 30 years, but, more than 100 years. That has not changed. The same families, especially what I called ABCD, Aryan, Bahun, Kshetri, Dasnamis, they are in total control, and this they thought is inter-elite competition, and they'll be able to control it easily.
Can you just define this for the? Can you just define this for the Indian audience ABCD? Can you just speak on that?
Yeah, in Nepal, this ABCD community, I have coined that term. They say that they in the constitution, in the present constitution, it is defined as Khas Arya. So they say we are Aryans, and the listed there is Brahmins, Kshatris, and Dasnamis, these three castes. So they have controlled all the reins of government for so long that they thought that they will be able to tide over this inter-elite competition with ease. They could not anticipate that there was dissent within their own ranks.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. That's very, very interesting. Sachin, you are the youngest of the lot here. You know, you're part of the political parties. Do you feel that there's an elite strata in Nepalese politics, and then the rest? Is this correct?
Well, Sigalal Dai is much more left than where I stand. So, I may not have complete agreement with what he says, but there is certain bit of truth in it, and he's somebody I look up to. So I do not directly want to attack onto him. But how I see it is, I see more of a generational battle here. I see more of a generational battle because the mayor, the individual that the country is banking upon comes from a Madhesi community. He comes from a Madhesi community. He does not portray himself from.
Who are you talking about? Who are you talking
Balen
about?
Shah.
Balen Shah. Are you saying he's the front runner?
Yeah. No, he is from the Madhesi community. He does not portray himself in that manner.
Is he the front runner? Is he the front runner?
He definitely looks as the most popular and most legitimate leader so far, as far as I've read the comments of agitators. I think he's somebody that the young people, especially the Gen Z community, is looking upon. And how I see it is, it was a generational battle, and this is something I've been repeating in my party. There had been 20 years of unincluded generation in every party, every major party, and that includes the three top parties. Raprapa, the only one with a little bit of difference in that sense were the new parties those were coming in. This generation had no connection whatsoever to the oldies who had been in political establishment for 4 long decades. Now remember, 4 long decades. Imagine how many prime ministers did Britain have in 4 decades. Imagine how many presidents did America have in 4 decades. But in Nepal, the same uncles who then became fathers and now grandfathers were in political leadership for 4 long decades, and they forgot the root completely. Everything that we protested against was taken either too lightly or they took us as a joke. And even in my political party, unfortunately now, it has been one of the most hated institutions. We had this idea, we're pushing this idea into the political party, but the resistance was such that they believe that for the 30 years we've run this country, for the 40 years we've run this country, no one can do anything to us. Was their attitude? Yes.
Okay. It's time for a short break. And our coverage on Nepal will continue. And when I'm going to come back after a short break, I'm going to show you a ground report, which our reporters have done from Kathmandu. And I'm going to take you through the entire profile of Mr. Oli, who is in the eye of the storm when it comes to Nepal. But after a short break.
एसोसिएट स्पॉन्सर एंकर टूथपेस्ट, नए जमाने की नई सुरक्षा।
The power of Digi-Alkaline from Nippo Thor.
ये बेस्ट है सर।
हमेशा वाला क्यों नहीं?
मिश्रा जी, आपके लिए फूलों की बरसात, बिरला ओपस एश्योरेंस देने के लिए।
मतलब प्रोडक्ट वारंटी
ये एक्स्ट्रा है। 1 साल में पेंट को कुछ भी हुआ तो पेंटिंग वापस करके देंगे।
वापस करके देंगे?
वो भी फ्री। पेंटिंग में पहली बार बिरला ओपस एश्योरेंस। रजिस्टर करो birlaopus.com पर।
ब्यूटीफुल।
18th सेंचुरी और अभी तक चल रही है।
ज्यादा नहीं चलेगी।
कुछ कहा?
प्रोमिनेंस नहीं,
प्रोमिनेंस।
वाओ, ओरिजिनल।
या स्पेन से लाए थे।
वहीं छोड़ा थे। प्रोमिनेंस नहीं है ना?
प्रोमिनेंस?
मैं कहना चाह रहा था कि प्रोमिनेंस नहीं है।
प्रोमिनेंस मतलब
प्रोमिनेंस विंडोज, इसमें है हाईएस्ट वेदर रेजिस्टेंस और घर को रखे सेफ फ्रॉम टर्माइट, सीपेज, डस्ट एंड नॉइस। प्रोमिनेंस फॉर द वर्ल्ड यू डिजर्व।
3, 2, 1, fire!
So this is a special coverage on Nepal. And very soon, there's going to be a major statement which will come from Nepal, because the buck now is with the Nepalese army. Nepalese army will have to take a call as to how the order will be restored in the 77 cities. But now let me play out a ground report from Kathmandu, where our correspondents have been deployed.
नेपाल में राजशाही खत्म होने के बाद लोकतंत्र बहाल हुआ था और इसके बाद उसको लेकर लोग खुश भी बहुत ज्यादा थे। लगभग 2 दशक बीत चुके हैं, लेकिन लोकतंत्र के सबसे बड़े मंदिर को देखिए कैसे आग के हवाले कर दिया गया है। ये अपने आप में चौंकाता है, हैरान करता है और ये समझ से परे है कि लोगों को इससे क्या मिल रहा है, क्या हासिल हो रहा है। गाड़ियों को आग लगा दी गई, सदन को आग के हवाले कर दिया गया। लोकतंत्र का प्रतीक, लोकतंत्र का सबसे बड़ा मंदिर इस वक्त धूम कर चल रहा है। लोग बाहर जश्न मना रहे हैं, अब भी लोग नारेबाजी कर रहे हैं। प्रधानमंत्री को लेकर बहुत आक्रोश था, सरकार को लेकर बहुत ज्यादा आक्रोश था और वो आक्रोश अभी भी मुझे यहाँ पर नजर आ रहा है। हजारों की संख्या में, 1.5 घंटे से ज्यादा वक्त बीत चुका है संसद भवन को जलते हुए। हजारों की संख्या में लोग यहाँ पर हैं। पूरा परिसर ये देखिए संसद भवन है, जल रहा है, लोकतंत्र का मंदिर। और लोग
Now let me straight away introduce my guest to you. I'm joined by Ambassador Veena Sikri. Thank you so much, Manu, for joining me. SD Muni continues to be with me. Dr. Ashok Shresth, cardiologist. A very young cardiologist joins me from Kathmandu. Dr. Vasudev Krishna Shastri, scholar. He also joins me from Kathmandu. Let me straight away go to Dr. Ashok Shresth. Ashok, you know, it's a Gen Z protest. Thank you first of all for joining me from Kathmandu. Why did it turn so violent today? Why were people attacked? Why were politicians attacked so brutally? Former PM's wife, she passed away because the house was set on fire. Why has that happened?
Thank you for inviting me in this your platform. What happened today was, I think, what happened today is it's an accumulation of that anger, that frustration that this government poses on this young youth who came out in the front and who came out to protest against this corrupt politicians, this corrupt system, and what led to this destruction of the public property. I think it's a very big mistake also, but it's purely out of aggression, frustration that was building in these youths from years, from past very many years.
Okay, हमारे साथ डॉक्टर वासुदेव कृष्ण शास्त्री भी हैं। शास्त्री जी, ये हो क्या रहा है नेपाल में? ये कोई बाहर के संगठन आ गए हैं जिसके कारण इतनी वायलेंस हो रही है?
देखिए कार्तिकेय जी, ये नेपाल में अंदर से जो विगत 17 साल से जो लोग यहाँ परेशान थे ये व्यवस्था से, काफी लोगों ने धर्मनिरपेक्ष नेपाल में जबरदस्त लादा गया। नेपाल की जनता जो नहीं चाहती थी वो जबरदस्त लादा गया, इसीलिए नेपाल की जनता ने काफी सालों से छोटे छोटे संघर्ष होते रहे और यहाँ छोटे से संघर्ष होते रहे, लेकिन अभी इतना बड़ा जेएनजी वाला जो ये संघर्ष संपूर्ण रूप में पूर्णाहुति की तरह आया है और ये बड़ा आंदोलन बाहर से नहीं अंदर से ही है, नेपाल के अंदर से ही है। नेपाल के लोगों के अंदर जो गुस्सा फूटा है ये अवश्य ही राष्ट्र के लिए और ये जो धन जन की क्षति हुई है इससे ही बाहर से लोग तो नहीं आए ना, अंदर से ही है।
आपने धर्मनिरपेक्षता क्यों बोला, सेक्युलरिज्म, आपको क्यों लगता है सेक्युलरिज्म मुद्दा है नेपाल में?
नेपाल में ये देखिए, नेपाल जो है प्राचीन काल से अति एशिया सबसे बड़ा दुनिया का प्राचीन सनातन हिंदू देश रहा है और इस देश को बलात् बिना जनता से पूछे ये धर्मनिरपेक्ष बनाया गया। इसीलिए यहाँ की जनता में जो आक्रोश है, ये आक्रोश इसीलिए है कि यहाँ की जो जनता, ओमकार परिवार बोलते हैं, 97% ओमकार हिंदू है, बौद्ध है, जैन है, सिख है, किरात है, प्रकृति धर्म वाले हैं। 97% लोग चाहते हैं कि ये धर्मनिरपेक्ष कैसे आया, रातों रात आया, इसीलिए यहाँ धर्मनिरपेक्ष नहीं चाहते और इससे पहले भी बहुत बड़ा आंदोलन हुआ था और इसीलिए हम नेपाल की जनता अभी भी सड़क में नारे लगे हैं कि हिंदू राष्ट्र होना चाहिए और धर्मनिरपेक्षता यहाँ से विदा होना चाहिए।
ठीक है, आप रुकिए। Professor Muni, you wanted to comment, but let me just introduce Ambassador Sikri. Madam, your opening comments on the developments today in Kathmandu and your sense of the situation, ma'am.
Well, I think that building up on what happened yesterday it seemed as a protest from Gen Z Nepal. Now, Gen Z Nepal is an organization which says they don't have any leader, but if you go to the website, it is very well planned, very well organized. There are detailed instructions given for each day, what people should do, where they should go. So obviously there is a coordinating hand for Gen Z at some point, even though there is no declared leader. And even if you looked at the website, they had given their demands yesterday, which said that we want all the members of parliament to resign and we want an interim government. So, it did seem very much a kind of a situation, and a lot of it was also in English, which again gave a lot of indication that Gen Z Nepal is an organization which has been there, which actually had announced their protest also for yesterday, and that is why the social media apps were shut down, which led to the huge rebellion by Gen Z, and then the people were shot dead. Now, today it's been taken over by a complete mobocracy. Now, I agree with some of the issues that have been raised. These are internal issues of Nepal. These are very important issues in Nepal, and the people of Nepal discuss them very urgently. But there is no reason at all why this kind of burning and killing should take place. When the Prime Minister resigned, when the whole government has resigned, I don't think there's any reason for destroying public property, destroying individual property, killing individuals, and a lot of people in Nepal are angry with this. Now, I'm very glad that by the evening, just a few minutes ago, the news has come in, because earlier throughout the day there was all kinds of news swirling. Somebody said the president has resigned and so on and so forth. But I think I'm very glad that the news has just come in that the president has invited the Gen Z Nepal for a dialogue. So that is a very good thing, that there can be absolutely a peaceful outcome of the whole situation. And secondly, the president has asked the army to control the situation. And we saw even in the visual that you were showing that in some places the army has done a peace march and they have, it shows the situation has come under control. But perhaps this may not be true in all the places in Nepal, and there are parts of Nepal which are still burning. So we are hoping that, I think that the situation will come under control. This is an issue, where all of us are worried, because we've seen something similar happening in Sri Lanka. And in Sri Lanka, they went back to the constitutional method. They had elections, there were all the demonstrations, the people entered the president's palace and so on. But then they went back to a constitutional situation and solution, and they have a new government. In Bangladesh, on the other hand, there's a complete mobocracy even today prevailing. And in Bangladesh, we know that the whole power behind all the actions was the Jamaat-e-Islami and their cohorts. And they are controlling the situation even today. And they are wanting to have, calling for a change of the constitution and calling for, reforms first and elections later and so on. So there are elements of all of this. You can very much see those elements in Nepal. Nepal. There is no doubt about that these elements are there, and the way in which, the whole thing is emerging. But I'm very glad that the leadership in Nepal, the president and the army, which are the two strongest constitutional authorities in Nepal, they are taking the situation. In fact, is he a representative of Gen Z? This we do not even know yet. So he's a popular leader, no doubt about it. But is he a representative of Gen Z? Is he on his own? Are there others who are saying
I think, I think one will have to wait for the situation to stabilize, because the meeting has to take place, and one really doesn't know whether the goalposts will remain the same or will they continue to change as it happened in Bangladesh. That didn't happen in Sri Lanka, so everything came down to elections, and then we had the new Prime Minister. Yes, Professor Muni, you wanted to come in, you had raised your hand.
मैं शास्त्री जी से एक सवाल पूछना चाह रहा था, अगर आप इजाजत दें तो।
बिल्कुल आप पूछिए। उन्होंने धर्मनिरपेक्षता तो बोला था, मुझे लगा आप पूछेंगे जरूर।
शास्त्री जी ने हिंदू राज्य की बात की। मेरा सवाल ये है कि हिंदू राज्य नेपाल कब बना? 1962 में बना। हिंदू समाज तो नेपाल का सदियों पुराना है, भारत भी हिंदू समाज सदियों पुराना है, लेकिन हिंदू राज्य नेपाल में 1962 में बना। और अगर हिंदू राज्य को जनता चाहती है तो नेपाल की जनता ने हिंदू राज्य वाली पार्टी को वोट क्यों नहीं दिया जीतने के लिए? वो सारे जीत जाते वहां पर। अगर आप लोग ये जो रेफरेंडम की बात करते हैं, उनसे भी मेरा यही सवाल है कि इलेक्शन तो हुए ना, राष्ट्रीय प्रजातंत्र पार्टी ने इलेक्शन लड़े।
देखिए सॉरी जो हिंदू राष्ट्र जो रातों रात जो खत्म किया गया हिंदू राष्ट्र, रातों रात जो संविधान से बाहर किया गया, और 62 की बात नहीं है। नेपाल तो आप जाके देखिए कि एशिया की सबसे प्राचीन देश है नेपाल, जहां हिंदू संस्कृति, सभ्यता, परंपरा स्थिति है। 62 की बात नहीं है सर, सॉरी 62 की बात नहीं है, क्योंकि नेपाल सनातन काल से हिंदू राष्ट्र है, रहेगा और आने वाले भी समय रहेगा। लेकिन आप लोग कुछ बुद्धिजीवी लोग चाहते हैं कि हिंदू राष्ट्र नहीं था। क्यों नहीं था?
नहीं था, आप संविधान को देखिए ना, राजा महेंद्र को पूछिए।
देखिए आप लोग जो आप लोग जेएनयू से जो भेज रहे हैं ना, यहाँ नेपाल में जो जेएनयू से आपने लोग भेजा, आपने भेजा, बहुत गलत किया है।
अपने संविधान
बहुत गलत किया है। आप लोग ने जो परीक्षण करके भेजा है यहाँ लोगों को भेज करके, यहाँ धर्मनिरपेक्षता, कम्युनिज्म डाल करके नेपाल की धर्म, संस्कृति, परंपरा को जिस तरह से आपने खंडित किया है, ये बहुत गलत बात है। हम लोग 17 साल से इसी में लगे हैं, क्योंकि हमने धर्मनिरपेक्षता के विरुद्ध में हिंदू राष्ट्र के लिए हमने अभियान छेड़ा है, और नेपाल हिंदू राष्ट्र बन के रहेगा। आप रोक नहीं पाएंगे।
Okay. Let me straight away go to Ashok. Ashok, you are a young cardiologist. I mean, so these are the issue positions, political positions which are there in Nepal. You as a young person, how do you see the future of Nepal? In whose hands lies the future of Nepal?
Okay, thank you for the question again. What I see from this protest, how these young from the age of 17 to 28 who came in front to protest against this corrupt nation, corrupt politicians and this corrupt system. I am very proud of this generation, and I want to salute all those brave youngsters who came up front without any fear of the guns, without fear of being being protested and murdered by the nation. By seeing these youngsters, what I believe is these youngsters, these generations are very much aware of this politics. They are very much aware of the system. They are very much aware if we need the change in the system, we can come up front and we can change by ourselves. So I'm very much, I want like to believe that in the future, we'll see the new young leaders will save the future nation in the brighter way, in the bigger way, and lead our nation where it belongs to, where we want it to. And maybe some young leaders will confront from this young protester and will lead this nation where we want this nation to stand for. And I like to appeal to all those young protesters who came in this protest, who came for this nation, Ashok, against this corrupt nation.
Let me ask you a very straight, specific question, because this whole debate happened between Professor and Mr. Shastri. Does this current Gen Z group do they want to change the constitution of Nepal?
Yes, of course, we want some changes in the constitution of Nepal. Like, what we want is the basic thing is the freedom of speech. And the second thing, the first and foremost, what we are demanding is the directly elected prime minister. What we want as a nation, as a youth, what we are demanding from the very long time, which was not addressed before, but now it's our time, it's the youth time. The youth are coming in front, and we want to change the constitution for the directly elected prime minister so that we can choose our leader who will serve for us, not for themselves, and serve this nation, not their family and the relatives.
So, Professor Muni, is there a shift? Do people want a different political system, not a parliamentary system which is in existence post, after the post 2006? I would say that's the separation point, because after that, that system worked itself till 2025. Do you think that will undergo some change, sir?
I am slightly amused on this, but the young man is absolutely correct. You know, the UML and the Congress came to power on the agenda of changing the constitution. That was the agenda they came on. And before them, the Maoists have always been saying, Prachand has always been talking about the directly elected prime minister. Look, I mean, this is a moment of agitation. This is a moment of huge emotional disturbance in Nepal, and I can understand it. That people want to change the system. Constitutions are changed at all the times, everywhere, not only in Nepal. There is no constitution which has remained static. There are amendments.
But there is a difference. I am also joined by Abhishek Basaniat, economist and social activist. Thank you so much, sir, for joining me. Yes, Ambassador Sikri, you can make your point, because constitution can be changed by democratically elected political parties, but constitution being changed from the street is a different thing altogether. That is my point of view. Yes, madam.
Yeah. No, I was in fact going in on the question of constitution, that is this a way of changing constitution by burning homes and killing people and burning ladies to death? I mean, this is not the way to change a constitution, and this is not, it does not show any maturity and recognition of the seriousness in which the constitution of a country needs to be discussed and changed. I agree with Professor Muni that these same political parties who promise the same thing then come to power and don't change it. So the anger with the elected leadership is palpable, and that is also there. But this kind of complete destruction, not only of individual lives but individual properties, government property, national property, all that, it doesn't lead to any reconciliation between the groups. It only drives people apart. And I can only hope once again that the president of Nepal, who is trying his very best, Mr. Ramchandra Paudel, to bring groups together and to have a dialogue so there can be a peaceful solution, that he is successful in his efforts. Because I think that just reiterating one's own point of view does not lead to solutions all the time. So that is what we hope for. Firstly, the violence has to be end, and we hope the army is able to achieve that.
Absolutely. Abhishek also joins me from Kathmandu. Your opening comments, sir. Why did the protest turn so violent? And do you think that there will be structural changes in the larger political framework which are going to take place?
Well, structural changes, they have to happen. And in my view, what we've seen in the last 2 days is basically that's just the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, right? The anger and frustration against malgovernance, misgovernance, misrule, corruption has been simmering in Nepal for at least 10-15 years. So I see what's happening now as the final build-up or the volcano eruption of activism against and anger, frustration against corruption and malgovernance since the last probably 15 years. It began with a movement called the Bibekshil movement, 2011-12 is when it started. So even by then, the revolution of 2006, of course, got rid of the monarchy. But then by 2011-12, frustration against the new regime, the new republic, had already started. And on the back of movements like Bibekshil Saja, people like Balen, who's the current mayor, Ravi Lamechhane, the leader of the Rashtra Swatantra Party, Ghanti Party, they all built up on the Vivekshil type movement, right?
Okay, Abhishek.
So all of this has
Abhishek,
been building
let me
up.
ask you. Do you think? Okay, let me ask you. Do you think secularism is an issue in Nepal? 2.5 years ago, I made a 2-hour-long documentary which was titled, which was part of the News9 Class 10, Rise of the Hindu Rashtra. I spoke to at least 30 people, political parties, royalists, former army chief, those involved in the conversation in 2006, 2005, when Sham Saran was the foreign secretary. But
yes,
I do agree that, you know, if there would have been a big political force, they would have had bigger say in the parliament. But do you think that there is an issue there, or this protest represents just economic issues, just issues related with political dynasties, just issues related with insularity of big political families in Nepal?
The current movement of the past 2 days, I think, is mainly to do with corruption, misgovernance, misrule of the political parties who promised so much more and so much better and have delivered so little. In a sense, they have cheated the people who supported them back in 2006 and brought them to power, right? And who were willing to be led by them, and the new constitution was made by them on the back of the people who trusted them to deliver better rule and governance. And yet, in the name of democracy, all they've done is serve their own selves, their selfish interest. And after 15 or more years, people are just absolutely frustrated. And the last 2 days, because the social media ban led the Gen Z to come out. It was a peaceful protest to begin with, but police brutality led to this, right? And the precursor, in my view, the precursor to this was the protest in March, and that was by the pro-monarchist group who care a lot more about Hindu Rashtra and secularism, etc. So the last 2 days, I think, is less about secularism and Hindu Rashtra. But back in March, the Tinkune incident, the government employed the same tricks. Police brutality. Basically, this is a special interest group that has hijacked the state and uses state power against people who are demanding only simple things that everybody in the world demands, every country, right? But they completely obliterated the Tinkune movement by the pro-monarchy forces, and they refused to do a fair and judicial inquiry of that incident, which was what the group had demanded. Had they done that inquiry,
Oli was a very pro-Chinese politician. The only thing he did was, Oli was a very pro-Chinese politician. The only thing he did was to ratchet up anti-India sentiments. If you look at his entire tenure, the things which he did in context of ratcheting up tension with India is, I think, the most in last 20-30 years.
Well, yeah, he tried to do that to play to nationalistic sentiments, and that can work up to a certain point, right?
Absolutely.
That worked way back in the Indian blockade of, when was it, 2016, after the earthquake. That's how he became PM, riding on that, after the earthquake, the blockade was a really terrible thing to do.
उनको लगता था वही काफी होगा सरकार चलाने के लिए,
but he keeps playing the same card, and it's run out.
Absolutely. And Ambassador Sikri, closing comments from you, before I wrap up the show. Do you think that Mr. Oli was such a pro-Chinese politician, like the way Moizu is? Do you think that he felt that only just ratcheting up anti-India sentiment was enough to rule Nepal? That would sail him through. And and the real thing happened in front of him, because politicians need to govern.
No, I agree that the very sharply pro-Chinese proclivities of Mr. Oli had always been a problem, and he even, let it extend to the question of the border, etc., Lipulek, all that is completely...
Is it Nam-Sita complex?
Yeah, and I think that I agree. Every country has its own national sentiment, but there is this great, mutual benefit between the relationship that there is there between India and Nepal, the open border, the people coming in and working here and living here, and people from here going there and investing and having. So I think one has to in this kind of, it's really living in the same mohalla right next to each other.
Okay.
So we have to look at all aspects and not just look at one aspect, and then not get carried away by the the pro-Chinese sentiments. And in fact, I would say that the decision which Mr. Oli took, he never banned TikTok, but he banned all the other social media. And even when he came in, he actually removed the ban on TikTok in the beginning when he became Prime Minister. this time. And
Yes.
yesterday or day before, he did not ban TikTok but banned all the others. So his pro-Chinese views were very well known. And I think that, he had even tried to take up with the Chinese leadership the question of bilateral trade that we have agreed with China through that border and so on. So I think that one has to take a broader view. And I think that people of Nepal should appreciate that India is which it is your internal matter, but we are concerned about it.
Okay.
It's your internal matter. It is your issue.
Okay. Ma'am, I've really run short of time. Professor Muni, I'm really sorry. I've really run short of time, but we are not going out of this coverage. This is the continuous coverage on News9 Sir. And this is not going to end because, tomorrow there are multiple meetings which are going to take place. We are also expecting a big announcement from the Army Chief. So, and this will be a rolling coverage. And thank you all of you for joining me because this is all I had on Point today. I will see you tomorrow at the same time. Thank you and good night.
एसोसिएट स्पॉन्सर डायना प्रीमियम ब्यूटी सोप, पहली झलक करे खूबसूरत।
Papa, let's go to the happy birthday to the. I love you. Go to the go. I love my Dada. I love my Dada.
Skoda.
ट्रस्टेड लॉयर शर्मा जी